My name is Michael Kamas. I'm the Director of Technology here at KeyCode Media. And if you know KeyCode Media, you know for years we've done video, right? We've been selling a lot of Avid, a lot of Premiere, a lot of Final Cut. But what you probably don't know is we actually do a heck of a lot of audio. And one of the reasons we decided to bolster that game even more is bringing on John Connolly. Everyone here knows who John Connolly is, right? Yeah. If you know anything about Pro Tools, you know that John's the guy. And so when we found out that he may be looking for a home, we said, come into the warm bosom of KeyCode. So we've brought John on board. And one of the first things we did was craft an event like this so John could showcase a lot of the audio techniques that would be useful for video folks. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to KeyCode Media and introduce John Connolly.
Thank you. All right. That was a very nice introduction. Thanks for coming. Did everybody get a lunch? For those of you that are here, those of you, the millions and millions that are watching online, no lunch for you today. Sorry. Next time. So hopefully we'll be doing more of these in the future that are particular to audio. We're just kind of delving into this for the first time. And again, I thank you for coming. So a couple of things, a little more about my background. Michael already gave it to you. I'm new to KeyCode, but I've been related to KeyCode for quite a long time as an Avid rep. I worked for Avid for many years, so I was a ProTools rep, product specialist here in town. So I've dealt with KeyCode for many years, and I started my own company, I don't know, 2008, I guess it was. Yeah, 2008. ProTools Services. So I've been doing ProTools training and installs and consulting. I call it ProTools therapy. Thin line between training and support and all that stuff. And then I'm also an instructor at Berklee College of Music online, so I teach ProTools there. So suffice it to say, I eat, sleep, and drink ProTools, probably more than I should. So hopefully that'll be a good thing for any of you who may be interested in getting into Pro Tools or just bumping up your audio. So, as Michael mentioned, everybody's well aware of KeyCode's strong presence in the editorial and storage and live production arenas. No need to go there, but KeyCode does audio as well, and I think many people aren't aware to what extent, and that's part of our goal here is to show you what we're up to. And here's just a few of the recent audio clients that KeyCode's been dealing with, from medium size, small, audio bays to medium to very large audio installations. And I have a couple of pictures here. Not as many as I'd like. This is Chapman University. We just did a system upgrade there. That's a ProTools HDX system with an S6. And of course, South Park Studios, another Avid S3 console. So hopefully that gives you an idea what's going on there. So the topics that I want to touch on, and this is very freeform. If you have questions, I don't want to hear it. No, actually, go ahead. Please feel free to raise your hand and let's see if we can answer as many questions as we can. I wanted to talk about audio for video editors, and I know that's a difficult subject for some video editors, so I have to be careful. They put the light right in my eyes so that I can't see you glaze over as soon as I start talking about audio. So I have a bunch of small things I'm going to throw at you if I see you ducking out there. All right, so these are some of the topics that I wanted to touch on, and much of this is basics. It's very basic. There's a few things that are a little bit more advanced, but we're trying to introduce audio to new users, but also video editors. You have audio experience. You've been using audio on the video editing side for quite some time, and we just want to give you a little bit of tips and tricks. Recently, I did some workflow consulting for NBC and Fox, and it's always an interesting conversation when you get a bunch of video editors in one room and the audio mixers in the same room. It's kind of like Democrats and Republicans, and they meet in the middle, but they don't always agree on everything. So hopefully what we're trying to do is just educate each other on the other side of things and see how we can make the workflow a little bit smoother, because there's definitely things that we can do there. And a lot of improvements in features and functionality on Pro Tools that has helped that as well. All right, the second topic that I wanted to touch on was audio in-house. If you're a post-production facility that currently does not have an audio bay, we'd like for you to consider that. And it doesn't have to be a full-blown, full tilt audio bay like that one over there. We have an Avid S3 5.1 surround system, and it's up and running over there, and we definitely welcome you to check that out when we're done here. We've got a session open up, and you can do the touchscreen panning and the whole thing. It's kind of fun. It doesn't have to be full-blown like that. You can do it in varying levels based on what you need and, of course, what your budget is. You can now safely install, and I say safely, supported and safely install ProTools software on your Avid Media Composer system. And I've been going back and forth on my laptop here between ProTools and Media Composer quite easily. I'm using the same audio interface, and they support the same video interfaces too. So it's very easy to get your sequences out of Media Composer into ProTools. And while I say Media Composer quite often, same applies for Adobe Premiere and Final Cut too. So getting out of those applications are easy. Not as easy as it is on the Avid side, but definitely easy too. So you can do a very basic Pro Tool system, or you can go full tilt, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, all right, so I have, let's see, of course, Pro Tools open. I want to have Media Composer open. I'm going to quit Pro Tools, and I'm going to launch Media Composer. So while I'm doing that, I wanted to elaborate just a bit on the video side of Pro Tools, starting with version 11, where the current version is 12.8 for Pro Tools. They had an issue with video playback way back when, and they decided, you know what, we do have a video engine at Avid, and I say we when I was there. You're not supposed to see that trial mode screen. Who did that? Anyway, so what they decided to do to make compatibility as smooth as possible is they incorporated Avid Media Composer software into Pro Tools software. So the video playback engine inside Pro Tools is Media Composer. And what that means is full compatibility. Pro Tools does not yet do 2K or 4K, but other than that, all the standard def and HD resolutions that Avid supports in the native format, MXF file formats, HD, DNX, video, is fully supported in Pro Tools. That's a huge thing. No more transcoding. That alone is a game changer for a lot of people. If you've ever tried to do, an export transcoding an HD sequence to QuickTime, you probably know what I'm talking about. So that's not necessary. The other thing that's very cool about Pro Tools starting at 11 and current is it supports all the same video hardware. So if you have an Avid DNX-IO or any of the Aja or any of the Blackmagic video peripherals, they all work in Pro Tools as well. So once again, you're using Media Composer, for example, on your system. You quit Media Composer, you launch Pro Tools. It's using the same video and audio hardware. It makes things very easy. So I've got a sequence here, and I'm going to play it very briefly. Anybody have any of you taking the Avid Media Composer certification courses? This is where I got this media from. You'll recognize it. And I'm going to skip ahead. So it's about these runners who decided they're going to run through the Sahara Desert. I don't know.
What better way to experience?
But what really caught my attention was this guy. I call him affectionately Knucklehead.
We're getting ready to leave, and it dawned on me what better way to experience, a well than to go down in it myself.
So he's in the Sahara, getting a first-hand, experience of this country, and he just sees a well and decides what better way to experience that than to go down into the well. Anyway, enough said on that. So I've cut together a very short sequence, 4 or 5 clips here and audio, and I've laid in some music tracks. And one of the things that I've found in the past when dealing with especially promo departments, ABC or NBC, is editing music inside Media Composer or any frame-based application can be tough. So you either don't do it, or you make edits and you cover up the edits with a whoosh. I know none of you have done that. That's never happened here, but that's one method. Or the other method is to make sure that you use music that is in a multiple of the frame rate. So if you're editing at 24, or let's say 30 frames, your BPMs, your tempo of your songs must be, 90, 120, 150 if it's really high energy. That's one way to get around that. Or another way is just to export that sequence into Pro Tools, where you can make your music edits very easy, and I'm going to show you how to do that inside Pro Tools. So the fact that Media Composer is frame-based limits your ability to make loops exactly the length that you want. And if you don't want to get into Pro Tools, we have a whole collection of wishes we can send to you. All right. Audio basics, we're going to touch on that a little bit. Dialog editing inside Pro Tools. And why a control surface? One of the things that I'm looking at right here is the Avid S3. This is a 16 fader control surface, and the Avid dock, which is a single fader and transport controls with an Apple iPad. It's a touchscreen, obviously it's an iPad, which gives me really deep access, not only to Pro Tools, but this works for Media Composer too. It's called Yukon. That's the software that this hardware uses to communicate with many applications that you might have on your system. Pro Tools, of course, is one. Media Composer, Logic from Apple. There's a dozen or more different applications that support the Yukon protocol. So if you use one of these audio control surfaces from Avid, they work on many different applications. And again, when I go back and forth between Media Composer and Pro Tools, my control surfaces are fully functional in both apps. So that's another big bonus. Looping music, we talked about that. Automation inside Pro Tools. Sometimes people are like, ooh, that sounds deep. It's not. It's really easy to do. And then my own Pro Tools top 10 shortcuts. It's a little PDF document that I've created. It's suitable for framing, and I'll hand that out at the end. And so let's dig in a little bit more on the exporting of sequences. So like I said a minute ago, have a conversation with your audio mixer. And I did a presentation on this not too long, maybe 2 years ago now. And those conversations are often short. As the video editor enters his bay and closes the door, the audio guys are going, hey, wait, what about my, anyway. So that's one thing that we really want to promote, is have a conversation before the project starts. What sample rate, what bit depth, what frame rate, what are the particulars of your project? It's less of an issue nowadays because Pro Tools supports so many of the same video resolutions that Avid does, but it will still save you some pain later down, downstream when you don't have the time to make up those issues. All right. So another thing that I'm not sure that many know about, and this is a question, a lot of people, I think, don't realize that you can name tracks in Media Composer. And if they do know it, they don't do it. And that's a helpful thing on the audio side. And you're like, great, why do I want to help the audio guy? Well, in this sequence, I took a second to name these audio tracks. And, we have an effects track, I have a dialogue track, I've got the knucklehead dialogue track, and I have a music track down below here. I'm going to rename that right now. Or to J Music. Okay, there it is. All right. So Pro Tools deals with templates quite effectively, and I know Media Composer, it's not as easy. But if you're in a workflow that has a constant turnaround, and again, I use the promo department as an example. They'll do 20, 40, 80 spots in a day. They're handing off these sequences back and forth from the video team to the audio team. If you take the time to develop a template sequence on the Media Composer side and name those tracks, the time coming from the video system to the audio system will significantly decrease. And more importantly, dialogue goes on dialogue tracks, effects go on effects tracks. And I understand in the past when you only had 8 tracks, 4 tracks of audio on a Media Composer, it was perfectly reasonable to shoehorn all of your audio clips into this sequence. Now, Media Composer and all the other apps as well, as far as I know, have enough audio tracks that you can spread that out. So you have, even to take it a step further, you have a particular character on each audio track. That would be immensely helpful. We did the math at CBS, this was several years ago. On an average day, they might have been doing 40 spots a day. Before the audio mixers even hit play, They spend anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes just organizing the audio clips, taking the gunshot off of the dialogue track, getting that whoosh off of that bad music edit. All these things before they even hit play. You do the math, 40 times, let's say 5 minutes per day. That's a significant amount of time that doesn't really need to be spent. If the video editor can place that clip on tracks that are pre-named, and hopefully the fact that they're named will give you a better shot of landing it on the right track. I'll show you how that can impact the audio side. And then the audio editor mixer has more time to mix rather than do, the cleanup administrative stuff. All right, so here's my sequence. It's got a single video track. It's very basic. I'm going to export it. And since I'm on the same system, this export is going to be very quick. I can tell some of you are like, oh boy, he's going to export. We'll come back in 20 minutes. I'm going to do a linked audio and linked video. Since I'm on the same system, all the media is there. I don't need to do any transcoding. I don't need to do any conversions. I might have to render some video effects if they existed, but that I don't think is too crazy of a request. So link to video, link to audio, and I'm using the entire sequence. And Knucklehead in a Well 3 is my sequence here. And there we go. I'm going to quit Media Composer. And I'm going to launch ProTools. Now, in this example, I'm doing everything on the same computer. This also applies if you're using shared storage. ProTools in the past was not friendly to network storage. If you are familiar with ProTools at all, you're probably familiar with that. Definitely not the case anymore. ProTools is a very happy player on Avid Isis and Nexus systems, and for any shared storage for that matter, it's quite viable. So this same thing applies. You've got your video editors on shared storage. You've got ProTools connected as well. You can access that same audio and video quite easily. And again, that's a huge time saver. So I'm launching ProTools. It's going to take a second here. The question is it necessary to quit Media Composer to go back to ProTools? I thought about doing that, but I'm going to say yes, it is necessary. Probably not a good idea because they are sharing components. I could turn the volume down and try it if you'd like. See how much smoke we can get out of this system. It might work. I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a session from a template that I created earlier, and I'm going to call this Knucklehead again, and 48K, 24-bit, all of my standard stuff there, and I'm going to put it in my keycode folder, ProTools Sessions. Now remember, I'm going to import this stuff. I'm not copying, I'm not transcoding, I'm just referencing the video as it was. Now the sequence, or the template that I've created in ProTools, which is very easy to do, has 4 dialogue tracks, 1 mono, 1 stereo effects track, and a couple of stereo music tracks. So I'm going to go to File menu, Open Session, and back out 1 level. I want to merge these. I closed it and opened up a new one, so I'm going to do import session data rather than open. Sorry about that. Okay, Knucklehead 3, there it is. And you'll notice I have the ability to look at the tracks of the sequence that are coming in. There's a video track, there's an effects left and right, a dialogue, and a music track, and it defaults to bring them in as new tracks. But if I hit this little match tracks button here, if I've done everything correctly, it will automatically look at the names of the sequence tracks and the names of my ProTools tracks, and it will go, oh, here's a music track, I'm going to line it up on a music track. Now, it didn't do every one because I didn't name them perfectly. I wanted to give you a little dose of reality that it's not perfect every time. But now when I hit, I'm going to bring these in as new tracks because there was not a video track in there. Click OK. There's my video. And I'm going to hide a couple of these dialogue there. Take it from the top. Watch my volume here. Okay, so now I have all the audio, I've got the video. Same resolution video. This is another conversation that audio mixers have all the time. The producer or the client or the director, whoever, will walk into the audio room after leaving the online bay, and they go, God, what happened to my video? In the past, you always exported these really low-res QuickTime videos. Number one, for size sake. Number two, for just time. And the picture quality that the audio mixer often used to get in the past was not good, very bad. So now with the features and functionality of Pro Tools now, you have the same picture quality in Pro Tools that you have on the video side. And the idea there is that the decisions that you make as an audio mixer will be better as a result of looking at better picture. Lip sync, all those different things that will affect your mix will hopefully improve by looking at better video. Okay, so control surface, all of my volume. Here's another thing. Media Composer will send volume, pan, automation, and clip gain automation from Media Composer to Pro Tools. It's a great thing. There's this feature inside Pro Tools that allows you to select all that and immediately blow it away. Whoops, not that. No, I'm kidding. So in a perfect world, the mix that the video editor starts with is handed off, think of a baton on a relay race, to the audio mixer, and they build upon it. Now, that's not always possible. Sometimes they have to start over, but the functionality does exist. In this case, I did not bring over any of the volume automation, but since I've got the control surface here, I can quickly get some levels, right? So I'm going to start play, but I'm going to put all of my tracks in latch mode. We talked about automation briefly, and it's really easy to do. I'm going to hold down Option key so it applies to all tracks, and I'm going to go into latch mode. And what this will allow me to do, I'm going to bring up another automation window here. Now this is a function in Pro Tools HD software, not the regular standard software. ProTool Standard. Okay, so I'm going to start playback, and I'm going to ride my levels, and it's going to write. And latch mode means that it's going to keep writing at that level even when I let go. And by the time I get to the end of the sequence, hopefully I'll have a nice ballpark level of my levels, and I can write that automation back to the beginning. So I have the volume automation view visible so that you can see that. Hopefully that's working. And okay, you see the red lines there? Oh, my dialogue needs to come up.
Wow. I'm on the bottom
Of the well. Bottoming out. All right, so I've got some levels set. It stopped at the end of my selection. I didn't want to do that, so I'm going to try it one more time. I wanted to get it before it stopped. And here we go.
We're getting ready to leave, and it dawned on me what better way to experience, a well than to go down in it myself.
I couldn't agree more.
Wow!
Okay.
I'm on the bottom!
Now I'm going to hit this one button here, right to all. Now that level is my new automation from the beginning. And it's really easy to establish a starting point on this sequence. And of course, now I can go into touch mode and just touch that up. Touch mode means that it will write new automation only when I touch that parameter. This control surface is all touch sensitive, so the faders and the knobs, pan, sends, whatever plug-in parameters I want to use, that information will be written by simply touching those parameters. So I can get real deep with this. This is a very basic example of automation, but we can go much deeper with that if we want to. All right, so there's my sequence just as it was in Media Composer in Pro Tools with video. And again, we support all of the video resolutions with the exception of 2K and 4K as of now. I'm sure that will be coming in the future. And all right, naming audio tracks. Dialog goes on dialog tracks. Effects go on effects tracks. Stereo elements. Here's just a pet peeve of mine. If you have two audio files on a stereo track, left always goes on the odd number track, so 5 and 6. Not a big deal, but you have to go in there and move that if you're on the receiving that on the audio side. Here's last but not least, double clips. Don't double up clips, right? So one of the studios we were working with, the video editors didn't like the volume of a particular clip, so they would just add another one to get more gain. And sometimes there was 3 or 4 clips just to get more gain. So more gain's not always the answer, less gain on everything else. Subtractive is what that's called, right? Rather than trying to get that dialogue higher, bring everything else down. See if that works for you. That's another way to deal with that. All right, audio basics. So recording audio levels. Now, some I know are doing scratch VO or recording of some sort. So we wanted to talk a second about just getting a level and making sure that the level's not too low, but not too hot, right? It sounds simple, but it's not always as easy as that. So I'm going to mute all of these tracks and hide them and bring up a new audio track. And if I've done this correctly, we should see here. I'm going to mute that. I don't want a feedback loop. That would wake everybody up. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to make this track height a little bit larger. And this is easier said than done sometimes, right? You're recording a voice. Voice is very dynamic. It's got high peaks and low valleys, and you're trying to get a nice consistent volume level. It depends on the talent of the person on the microphone. It depends if they're on the mic or if they're off the mic. All those things make a difference, but also the level that you choose to record at. So if I were to receive a VO that was recorded at this very low level, I would have trouble making it sound good in the final product. On the other hand, if it's cranked to the top and I get distortion, we don't want that either. So you have to think about a happy middle of a nice level. So I tend to shoot for a 50 to 75% meter range there, and that's a little bit low. So I'm going to turn the volume down here. See if I can check. Hello, hello, hello. And I've turned the mic off into the speaker so I don't kill you there. So that level, oops, see now that's hot. I'm going to take it down a little bit here, and I'm going to record something and see how bad I can get it. And here we go. And of course I have absolutely nothing to say. You draw a blank. Now I'm going hot intentionally there. I'm peaking at the very top. You can see the waveform is clipping out. That's not good. I'm going to back it down. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Welcome to the Key Code Audio Magic event. So I'm right there in the middle. There we go. Okay. There it is. By looking at that, I can tell already that it's probably less than desirable. If you see the flat peaks at the top, that means that I was hitting it too hard. That's clipping. I'm going to bring it up and play it. Punish you guys for sitting here. All right, let's see what it sounds like. To say, you draw a blank. Now I'm going hot intentionally there. I'm peaking at the very top. You can see the waveform is clipping out. That's not good. I'm going to back it down. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Welcome to the... And when I say back it down, I'm taking the volume of the mic pre going into the system. It's not a software adjustment, it's a hardware. On this case, I'm using the Mackie mixer as my mic pre level to get into Pro Tools. It might be an external mic pre that you have. It might be an Avid M-Box or another audio interface that has a mic pre level on the front. That's where you're going to adjust the level going into the system. All right, so here's my audio. And, you know, I would first try to go back and go, okay, let's do that take again. If I didn't record it, it came from somebody else, I may or may not be able to do that. I'd be kind of stuck with that. There's a couple of things I can do, but right out of the gate, I would use clip gain, which is a feature in Pro Tools, which makes dialogue leveling very easy to do. In the lower left corner of every clip, there's a little mini volume fader, and it will allow me to adjust the gain. And when I'm doing that, I can actually visually see how I'm affecting that volume, right? So I might take it down a little bit because of those peaked areas. Hopefully I could salvage that, but I'm going to bring up the clip gain line. And there it is. Now I can go in here, and I'm using the ProTools Smart tool. This is a multi-tool, so depending on where I put it in the clip, it will automatically change to different tools, so I don't have to constantly change tools. So I'm going to level this out pretty quickly here. I'm going to take that down. I'm going to make a selection here and bring this up, and I might even do this up a little bit more. And I'm visually doing it, right? You don't have to be an audio engineer to see this. Just kind of leveling out the waveform height. And this will allow you to go through here quickly. Now I can see there's a peak there, so I'm going to select that, bring that one down. And of course these over here need to come up. Oh, there's a peak. I'm going to get that down. So now if I look at that audio, it's much more level. The upside of this is in Pro Tools pre-inserts. So when I say inserts, here's my audio track. When I put a compressor on this track, and this is another thing we wanted to talk about here, your compressors are going to work much better. What is a compressor? A compressor is designed to recognize those peaks and reduce them and bring up the overall level. Basically what I just did manually. Compressors, however, are not so easy to use for new users because you can't easily see what's going on. So for a new user, I would tend to say, use clip gain. You're doing the same function, but you can actually see what it is you're doing. You want to reduce the peaks, you want to bring the overall gain up. Now that I've done this dynamic clip gain within inside the clip, I can take the whole thing and bring it all up. But it's really easy to use. It's on all Pro Tools systems, and it makes Dialog stand out because you can easily reduce those peaks. In the past, if you turned up the volume on a Dialog track, even if it was recorded properly, in order to get enough gain out of it, you would potentially clip in some areas. Reduce those peaks, bring the overall gain up. You're going to get a much better volume. And then when you use a compressor, you can use kind of standard default settings oftentimes to get really good results out of it. So I'm going to play that. The distortion is still going to be there. We have another method to deal with that. I'm going to touch on that briefly, but let's listen to it. So think about the level, not so much the distortion, but the overall level of this.
Of course, I have absolutely nothing to say.
My threshold's kind of
Draw
low.
a blank. Now I'm going hot intentionally there. I'm peaking at the very top. You can see the waveform is clipping out. That's not good. I'm going to back it down. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Welcome to the Key Code Audio Magic event. So I'm right.
It's hard to hear that specifically. If I put music behind it and other effects, it would stand out a little bit better in the front and center, and that's what you want. All right, so clip gain, very cool function, very easy to use. Export that audio out of your video editor. You do have clip gain in Media Composer as well, but it's not as fluid as this. So take advantage of that. What is EQ? I get this question often. Video editors are starting to glaze. I can hear it. I can see it. EQ is just volume. You have a volume fader that brings the volume up or down of the entire audio signal going through that channel. EQ is same thing, but it's specific to certain frequencies. If I want to turn the volume of the bass up, I can do that with an EQ, or turn the bass down, just like the EQ in your car. When you're rolling around listening to tunes and you want to bump the bass, you turn it up a little bit. It's just volume, that's all. And an EQ in Pro Tools or Media Composer, which is oftentimes using the same plugins, has the ability to use one band. So if I wanted to adjust just the bass, I could do that, or just the highs, one single band, or I could take it to a much deeper level and go to a 7-band, and this would allow me to adjust 7 different parameters: the bass, the mids, the high mids, etc. So EQ is used to kind of tame those very large bandwidth. So an example, let me show you. Again, Dialog. If you're recording voiceover, your voice has a narrow bandwidth. It's not as low as, they think about the piano keys all the way down to the low end. That's very low. Think about the piano keys all the way to the high end. The voice, human voice, sits kind of in the middle range, right? So everything that your mic captures way down low and way high, you can effectively get out and will clean up your Dialog. I wouldn't get rid of the highs too much, but I might filter out all of the lows. And I might take this up about there, and I would listen to the voice, and when it starts to get nasally, I'll do it, then I would back it down.
Of course, I have absolutely nothing to say. You draw a blank. Now I'm going hot intentionally there. I'm peaking at the very top. You can see the waveform is clipping out.
That's very
I'm gonna back
overdone.
Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Welcome to the key code.
And it just kind of tames it. This is also really good for P's. If you know how you hit a microphone with a P and you get that puff of air and it goes poop, you roll off the low end like that, it will tame those down. Or if there's a truck driving by, if your room is not soundproof and there's a big rumble, this will get rid of that. So this is a very easy way to really tame VO and voice recordings, just using an EQ. All right, so that's EQ and compression. Of course, we could dig in deeper on those, but I don't want to do that to you. Mixing audio, it's basically balance, right? You have all these different elements that you need to fit into this stereo image. You've got a left and right speaker, and you've got to cram all of this stuff, if it's a fairly complex sequence, into a stereo field and have it make sense. And one of the things I think people don't realize about audio is trust your ears. You've been using them forever. When you have a conversation and you can't hear somebody, you automatically go, hey, I can't hear you. Or you tell your kids, turn the TV down, or whatever it happens to be, you're mixing at that point, right? You do it all the time. And unfortunately, in the real world, you don't have the ability to turn down the clatter in a restaurant or whatever the case may be. But in Media Composer or Pro Tools, you absolutely do. So what you want to think about is, what is the element that should be capturing my attention at this moment? Is it dialogue? Then that should be front and center. That should be up. Everything else should be down. You don't want to get rid of it. Think about a song. And this is an exercise that I pass on to people that help you develop your listening. People go, well, I'm not an audio engineer. You don't have to be. Next time you're in the car, listen to a song, and hopefully it's a song you like, but pick out an element. Maybe it's piano. Maybe it's not the main vocal, because that's pretty obvious. Find something that's kind of in the background. Maybe it's a drum or a shaker or something. One element, and just focus on that. And zero in on that. Kind of in your mind, block out the other audio elements in there and pick different elements within a song and just practice listening to that. And then that will apply to your audio mixing in Media Composer or Pro Tools or Premiere or Final Cut, wherever the case may be. What is the focal point? I don't want to get rid of everything else, but I have to put everything else in its place. What's front and center? Where does everything else belong? So that's my my overall mix tip. All right, let's see, what else? Okay, this I think is very important for a lot of people, and this is easy to do, won't cost you anything, right? You remember the Roland speakers? Those are not speakers. If you're doing any sort of audio, do not use those. It's great to have as a second pair, as a reference, but do not mix on those. And the reason is the bandwidth, right? They don't reproduce the highs, they don't reproduce the lows faithfully. So what you're hearing is not what you're sending out to the world. I think about, I don't know, putting on your makeup in purple light or green light. Your whole coloring scheme would be totally different than if you had correct lighting or color correction on video. I'm trying to put it in plain terms, right? You want to have a decent set of speakers. It's not expensive to get a decent set of speakers these days, and you don't have to go crazy. You can if you'd like, but for a few $100s, you can get a really good set of speakers. The beauty of technology. Place them at ear level or eye level as you're seated. If you're sitting in your mixed position, they should be equidistant apart, right at your ear level, facing you. And I take a tape measure. I set a mixer down. If I'm setting up a studio, I put them in the chair. I take a tape measure, stick it right on their forehead. No, I don't do that. From the chair to the top of the speaker. And I measure it and get it down to, a couple inches so that each speaker is the same distance away. They're centered off of the center. And more importantly, they're at the same volume level. We had this problem with these speakers right this morning. I was listening to it, and one of them was louder than the other. And that just, my OCD kicked in. I have to fix that. So we did it, adjust the volume, easy to do. You can get an application for your iPhone for free. It's dB meter. And you just put pink noise up on your Media Composer or your Pro Tools, really easy to do, and you send it out one channel and you stand there with your iPhone in the position that you'd be sitting and mixing from, measure the volume. Most powered speakers these days have a small volume knob on the back. Really easy to do, will give you a great benefit to your mix. You got to hear everything equally, right? And your mixing environment, think about where your speakers are placed. I've seen speakers, lopsided. One's behind the video monitor and the other one's up over here on a shelf. That's not an ideal situation for mixing. If you have to get stands, they're not that expensive. You could use, boxes, whatever it is you need to do to position your speakers properly. And then your mixing environment too. And this is, you could do a lot of things at little money, or you can go to great lengths in treating your room, but you don't want a very live reverb, live room. You don't want that, but you don't want a completely dead room either. So, sometimes curtains, carpet on the floor, bookshelves are a great diffuser. People pay a lot of money for this diffusion effect, and a bookshelf effectively is the same thing, as long as it's populated with books or something. So, take a minute to look at your mixing environment. And last but not least, like I said, trust your ears. You actually use them all the time. So give yourself some credit for mixing, because you're doing it all the time, whether you like it or not. All right. So if you're a new user, I've created my own ProTools Top 10 Shortcuts list, and this is available on YouTube. It's called ProTools Services channel, and these are mainly basic, but there's a few shortcuts in there that a little more advanced. But every ProTools user, regardless of your level, should know these. They're free, and I made these videos with myself in mind. I have an attention span about that long, so they're all about 60 seconds to 2 minutes long. So you can go in there and get the info and get out. All right. Now we talked about that distortion. Here's a couple of plugins that will add distortion in the event that you want to do that. This is a plugin from a company called McDSP. Colin McDowell is the mastermind behind these. He makes a whole series of great plugins, EQs, compressors. This is great if you're doing sound design. You need to make that phone futz. You need to make the the walkie-talkie sound effect. It's got, I don't know how many hundreds of presets of all these little cool things that you immediately throw this plugin on, and you've got an AM radio, whatever the case may be. Very cool plugin. If you do a lot of sound design, indispensable. On the other side, if you've got distortion or noise and you need to get rid of it, Isotope RX6. This is absolutely a must-have. And this version 6, and I wanted to include this here, focuses on solving some of the biggest issues in audio post, including lavalier mic rustle, that never happens, intermittent low-end wind rumble, and dialogue isolation. So this plugin is immensely powerful, and the cool thing is it's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to use it. They've got a bunch of great video tutorials. If you're dealing with, production audio, this is also a must-have plugin. RX6 from Isotope. And then metering, we talked about this too. You want to make sure that your mixes are broadcast, compatible. Metering plugin from Isotope. There's a bunch of metering plugins available. This is just one of them. But you want to keep an eye on that. And we could spend a whole event on metering if we wanted to, but we're not going to today. All right, so that kind of wraps up my audio for video, but this is the other half of audio in-house. If you're a video editor and you're doing you're wearing all of those hats, does it make sense to bring audio in-house to some degree, to a large degree or a small degree? And these are some of the factors that I think you should look at in making that decision. So budget, projects with a small budget. Thankfully that never happens, so you don't have to scratch that one off your list. Time. This is a big issue, right? You have a short deadline. If you have an out-of-house audio facility, which is great, because I don't want to, downplay those guys. They do a great job. Sometimes a short deadline prevents you from sending that audio out and getting it back. And if it's a sequence or a project that's ongoing with changes, that whole back and forth thing can take even longer. If you've got an audio room in-house, you eliminate a lot of that back and forth. With the improved interop that we talked about, Avid Video inside ProTools and shared storage, that back and forth time changes is reduced to nearly nothing. You can really speed up your process there. Delivery of project to and from outside mixers, I talked about that. And then, of course, review and approval. That's a whole nother process that goes back and forth. You send it out to be reviewed, it comes back. If that's all in-house, that could be a huge time saver when those changes need to be made. Security. We had an example of that not too long ago where some assets made their way out of a facility, and the risk of losing those assets increases when you're sending projects out. You can minimize that security risk by keeping everything in-house, right? Won't go into great detail there. And maybe it's a function that will allow you to expand your services. Maybe you don't offer voiceover recording or ADR or mixing now. Maybe it's another service that you can add to your arsenal of services that you offer already. Anytime you can add more revenue or offerable services, it's a good thing. All right. And on top of all that, it's cheaper to get into a ProTools system, right? So all these new features and functions, and I have a slide in here because I had to put it in writing because no one would believe me if I said it. Avid lowered their prices. I'll say it again. Avid lowered their prices. I'm not joking. A ProTools system, and Media Composer for that matter, you can get into quite cost effectively, and that can be a very small system all the way up to the largest system. So on top of the video compatibility, the video hardware compatibility, shared storage, lower pricing, faster than real-time bounce to disk. I didn't even talk about that. ProTools now allows you to bounce to disk. So you've got your ProTools session, many tracks of audio. You've got to output a stereo finished product. In the end, that was a real-time process. So if you had a 30-minute show, excuse me, it took 30 minutes to create that stereo file. ProTools now does it faster than real-time. It's all based on the speed of your computer, but it might be, a 30-minute show might be 2 minutes. Who knows? Huge time saver for deadlines. And of course, co-install ProTools on video editors. So if you want to dabble in ProTools in your video editor, you can safely do that. And if you're on shared storage, make sure you talk to your system administrator. Don't just put ProTools on there without, checking your compatibility with versions and all that, because you do have to pay attention to that. But as long as that's cool, ProTools and Media Composer can coexist on the same system quite nicely. There it is. In writing. No way. And when I say drop their prices, I'm talking significantly, in some cases more than 50%. So it's not like a 10%, 20%. We're talking in some cases huge amounts of price reduction, which is a good thing for you. And of course, then there's free. ProTools First. So you've probably heard about Media Composer First. That's a new version of Media Composer that came out recently. I actually opened it up yesterday for the first time, and I was pleasantly surprised. And that sounds terrible. I'm going to be more positive. It was very cool. It was quite functional. I was expecting it to be scaled down and maybe not as user-friendly as I thought, but it was actually very cool. The only reason I didn't use it for this project today is it doesn't allow you to export an AAF sequence. So had I might have had it done that, I might have used Media Composer First and possibly even ProTools First, but ProTools First doesn't import an AAF and it doesn't do video as of right now. But that's not a problem. If you want to get your feet wet with ProTools or Media Composer, you can do it at no cost. You can't beat that. And we have salesmen standing by. They're like, dude, nix it with the free stuff. Okay. ProTools for 16 audio tracks and a ProTools control app. So we talked about all the control surfaces, right? Hardware pieces. There's an app for your iPad, ProTools Control. It uses the same Yukon protocol. You can use it to control your ProTools software, your Media Composer software, any of the Yukon enabled apps. It's free. You got to have your own iPad, but the app is free. It's called ProTools Control on the App Store right now. Doesn't work with ProTools First, so you got to have the full version of ProTools. Media Composer First, I couldn't even. It's so new. I couldn't even find a logo for it. All right, so that's the free stuff. We have ultra entry level, just Avid ProTools software. Put it on your Media Composer. Very easy to do, right? Very low cost. It's probably I think $600 list price for a copy of ProTools, and you can do all of the audio video functionality that we showed today. And of course, we have a couple of larger packages, the entry level, that's the dock with an iPad, ProTools software, and a Focusrite audio interface. So this system would get you completely into Pro Tools with the ability to record, voiceover, whatever it is you wanted to do. It has a microphone and headphones, and you're good to go. And again, it works with Pro Tools, the dock does, and the iPad and Media Composer, or Final Cut. And anybody Premiere users know if it's Yukon enabled? I've asked that, but I've not gotten an answer on that before. Okay. I don't know about that. Intermediate production package, that's basically what we have right here. We've got the S3, 16 faders, touch-sensitive motorized, Atom speakers, ProTools software, Focusrite audio interface with a microphone and headphones. This is kind of an intermediate, and there's another shot of it. Basically what you see right here. In our advanced, with an HD, ProTools HD system. So maybe you need to do surround. Maybe your projects are a little bit larger in terms of track count and require more horsepower. And then you can get into the ProTools HD native Thunderbolt. And this will work on an iMac. I'm running it on a laptop right now. So it will, any computer is fine. And of course, Atom speakers as well. Or the whole enchilada, and that's what we have over there. So I invite you afterwards to come over and check out our S6 system over there. It's a ProTools HDX. It's a 5.1 surround system. We have a session up. It's got the touchscreen panner all ready to go. It's kind of fun to send vocals around to the different speakers. If you have large projects, and you need a lot of horsepower, high track count, then a ProTools HDX system. And this is similar to what you saw in the pictures earlier at Chapman College and, of course, South Park Studios. So there you have it. There's another shot of the Avid S3. This is a control surface. Again, it's Yukon enabled. It works for Pro Tools, Media Composer, Logic, any Yukon enabled app. All right, and also KeyCode is an Avid learning partner. I'm not sure if many know about that. That's relatively new. Pro Tools, Media Composer, and Avid S3 console training certification is available through KeyCode as well. And there we have it. All right, any questions about any of this? Let me wake you up first. Yeah. Good question. The question is everything we talked about is Mac. So PC is all good. Yeah, you can use Pro Tools, Media Composer on PCs. Yep, absolutely. The application, Pro Tools application is nearly identical. It's as identical as they can possibly be. Yep. Any other questions? Yes. audiosuite plugins do travel into Pro Tools as well, and when that sequence is opened up in Pro Tools, the Pro Tools editor has the option to receive them or not. And also track-based real-time plugins that you put on Media Composer audio tracks will come over as well into Pro Tools. Anything else? Yeah, good question. So the question is iLok, the licensing that Pro Tools uses for the Pro Tools application and many of Avid plugins, but also third-party plugins. So I don't know of any plans to get away from iLok at this moment, but it is a USB key that's required for ProTools Standard and ProTools HD. As far as I know, it's not needed for ProTools First. That would not make it free. So yes, an iLok is required, but any Pro Tools application that you purchase, standalone software or bundled with hardware, includes an iLok. Yeah. Yes? Good question. The question is Pro Tools, is it a year, annual, subscription, monthly? So you have the option to purchase it in a few different ways, and I'm assuming it's similar to Media Composer. So you can buy what they call a perpetual license, which means you buy a copy of Pro Tools, and that license is good indefinitely. At the end of a year, however, your ability to update that version will end. You'll be stuck at that version, right? You can get into an annual subscription. I think they use a different term for it, where you pay the $600 price and then $99 a year after that, and that will cover you for the next year. Any software updates or upgrades that are released, you automatically are entitled to, and your Avid online account will be populated with those. There's also a monthly subscription, so maybe you're in a project that you know you're going to be working on for the next 2 or 3 months, and then who knows, maybe you're not going to do anything for 6 months after that. You can purchase it on a monthly basis, and it's about $25 a month, I think it is. And when you stop paying, your license will end. You will not be able to use it, but then you can pick up at any other time at that same monthly rate if you think that your use is going to be sporadic. So if you're going to be using it ongoing, I would suggest you get into the the $600 price, and again, that's list, and then with the $99, the annual subscription, the $99 renewal. It includes support. Well, there's an option that you can add to it. So the question is, does that include support? So for an additional $99, it includes support and a whole bunch of plugins, additional Avid plugins, which are not bad to have. So for $200 a year, you get the ProTools app, you get all of the Avid plugins, and support calls as well. Your direct line to Manila. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Any other questions? Yes? Good question. ProTools versus ProTools HD. So many years ago, DigiDesign released ProTools LE, very scaled down version of ProTools. It was almost closer to a ProTools free. It had a track count limit. It had features and functions that were very limited. That's not the case with ProTools. I call it ProTools Standard and ProTools HD. The ProTools Standard version has, over the years, taken on many features that were previously only in the HD version. So the big things that you don't get in ProTools Standard is surround. So ProTools Standard is stereo. The track count in ProTools Standard is up to 128 tracks, which for most people is more than enough, whereas an HD system is 256 tracks. ProTools HD software has advanced automation features. The functionality that we showed today is all available in the ProTools Standard for the most part. There was one thing that was an HD thing, the right to end, right to beginning. Other than that, the touch latch, all that automation functionality is in both versions. The HD systems takes advantage of the HDX card, which is basically DSP processing built into the system, whereas the ProTools Standard software is not capable of doing that. ProTools HD software will take advantage of the higher end audio, Avid audio interfaces, which is not really an issue for most people these days. There's so many audio interfaces from Avid or not, Focusrite, PreSonus, Universal Audio all make great audio interfaces from 2-channel up to 32 channel. There's a couple other things, but they're really very small, and that was not the case in the past. So the ProTools Standard version is very, very capable, more than capable. Good question. Yeah, the question is can you get ProTools HD standalone? You can now. In the past, that was not possible. You could only purchase ProTools HD software as part of a hardware bundle. So you can now purchase it standalone, or you can purchase it with a bundle. If you have ProTools Standard software now, there is an upgrade to the HD version if you want. Yeah. So they've loosened that up, which is another thing I should have mentioned in terms of getting into Pro Tools. You can kind of step up as you need to. You don't have to jump into a big HD system if you don't want to or need to. Yes? Standard project. Yes, yeah. A session that you've created in Pro Tools Standard into Pro Tools HD, yes, completely compatible, with the exception of surround, right? So if I create a surround project in HD and I take it back to a standard system, I'll lose those multi-channel. But if it's fully stereo, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. The question is if you do your own project in Pro Tools Standard, you can take that project and open it up into a Pro Tools HD system. Immediately opens up, and they can build upon it and spread it out to surround if you want, or they can continue to, mix. Yeah. The compatibility between all the systems is a big effort for Avid. Yeah, making sure they all go back and forth. Yes. bit rate difference and sample rate difference. So it's all based on the hardware that you have. So both of them are capable. I want to say ProTool Standard definitely goes up to 96K, but I think if you have a 192K audio interface, I think it'll do it as well. ProTools HD maxes out at 192K. Sample rates, and then the bit depths are all changeable, 16, 24, and 32-bit floating bit depths on all systems. Yep. Is there somewhere else? All right. Thank you for coming. Please, if you have an opportunity and a desire to check out our S6 system, and this system up here as well, too, the S3, the dock. We'd love to show it to you. Thanks for coming. We appreciate your time.